What's going on Twitch and YouTube? Zero Lead here, back again with a new video, episode 22 of the U.S.S. CERRITOS tutorial. Just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and helping me in supporting the channel. Can't thank you enough for that. Today we have about a 24-minute video. Going to be picking up where we left off. Still have some work to do on the upper hull, as well as some other things. But we're primarily going to be focusing on this piece right here, which is I've been talking about a little bit as I've been going through this tutorial, because this was the one part that gave me the most trouble here. It's like I've said before, you know, sometimes when you're building something in Minecraft that doesn't always translate, or something from the real world doesn't always translate well over into Minecraft. So we're going to try to do some extra work to this thing today and make this piece look a little bit better, because I think it's a little bit off. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into full screen. Now, you can see from where we left off in yesterday's episode, I went ahead and I filled in the remainder of the hull here in the middle. The only part that's not filled in is this little gap here, but we'll get there eventually. So pretty much what we're going to be messing with here is extending this piece out, because if you go back to the very beginning of the episode, we were looking at that piece on the 3D model. It's just not long enough, and I could have maybe left it alone, but the goal here is to try to make as close realistic build as it possibly can. So I can't really, you know, just leave it alone. I've got to mess with it, see if I can come up with something that looks a little bit better. But even what I settle on, I'm not fully happy with. I got to be honest. And there's going to be cases like that, you know, where stuff just doesn't come out perfect. Um, you know, I kind of feel the same way about the very front of my engines. But I think maybe at the same time, I'm also, you know, my uh, biggest critic, and I might be a little bit hard on myself in that regard, but I still want to work on them a little bit more, because I feel like I can do better is what I'm getting at too. Um, but we're gonna mess with it. We're not done with the tutorial. We still got a ton of stuff to do. Even once we get these two pieces done on the right and left, um, we still have a ton of detailing to do on the outside. We've got stuff to do on the inside. We haven't even started the interior yet outside of the corridors. So there's a lot of work that we have to do on this build before we can call this thing done. I did have somebody ask me today if I can show a teaser for the Enterprise D. I don't have one at this time. I'm still, at this point, working on the CERRITOS. I probably won't have something for the Enterprise D until towards the end of this build. Um, at this point, I want to try to keep no gap in between the builds, but there could very well end up being like maybe like a week break in between the two, just because you got to think there goes a lot into making these ships. So I have to see how I feel towards the end of this build. I might be feeling really froggy, and I might just want to jump right into it. I might want to take a couple of days off. We'll see. But point is, won't be waiting too long before we do the Enterprise D. In the maximum, if I do decide to take a break, it won't be more than a week. And there'll still be content coming out on the YouTube channel. But no, we've got some stuff to do. And even when we do get in the Enterprise D, that's probably going to be a long tutorial, because of the size of it and the amount of time that I do these videos. And I try to keep them within like the 24, 34-minute range, because anything beyond that, I'm getting to a point where, you know, I'm overstaying my welcome, I think. Even at this point, you know, having like a 24, 34-minute video, I kind of feel like I'm overstaying my welcome a little bit, but there's just no way to get this amount of information and building done in um, a shorter amount of time. Um, they, you know, these builds, they just take time. And like what we're doing right now, we're literally just throwing down different building configurations until we come up with something that we like. And that's going to happen to you. And, you know, the best thing I can suggest is literally what I'm doing right now. Just keep thinking of different ways that you can build what you're trying to make a 3D rendering of. If it doesn't come out the way you want it to, take a step back, look at it, think about, okay, what did I do wrong here? How can I try to make it better? Sometimes you won't maybe follow on that right away. Sometimes it takes like a little bit of like exploratory building before you really get to where you want to be. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Because another thing too is the height of these of this strip right here. It kind of it goes at an angle downward when it gets to the back. So I can't have this big piece coming all the way out to here. So there's going to have to be a transitional period. It would be easier, a little bit easier if we had the colored half slabs, but at this point, I'm just worried about the shape. And if I have a combination of the gray blocks and white concrete half slabs, there's not much I can do about it. At this point, as long as it looks like it and it's the right shape, I'll take that as a win. Because this is hands down the most challenging part of this build that I have had to do so far. And you wouldn't think that because it's something so simple, just like a strip on, right in front of the shuttle bay. But I had the hardest time with this area right here. And there's really no easier way to explain it other than putting these blocks down in this combination. Um, and that I'm just trying a couple of different things until I end up on what I want. And that's why I'm also showing this instead of just what I ended up on, because there's a couple of things that I do. You can see literally everything I just did right there, I ended up taking away because I didn't like it. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. I'm going to delete the same amount of blocks. So I ended up in the same spot. So whatever I change at this point on the left and right side, it matches up. This is very important when you're doing something because you can change something on the left side and then run over to the right side and look at it. But you want to make that change like right after that. You don't want to sit on it for too long because it's still fresh in your mind, and the longer you let that sit, the more likely you are to make a mistake and the build won't come out as good. So really right now what I'm doing, it's imperative that whatever I change on one side, I got to go to the other side and change, because otherwise, it's more than likely that there's going to be a block here or there where they don't match up. We're not looking too bad. Other than this strip right here, we're not looking too bad, but it's going to be a little bit of a challenge getting this piece to transition down the way it needs to. At this point, I'm just trying to scope it out and I'm thinking best course of action to take. And another thing I did want to talk about, because I've been saying it, that I've been trying to decide on what I'm going to do with the interior as far as engineering goes. And I had reached out to a couple of different people on YouTube to try to get an answer to that question, and I actually have not gotten it. So at this point, I'm making the decision that I'm going to go off of what I'm seeing in the blueprints, and it looks like engineering is located in the saucer. So that's what I'm going to go for. And um, I think that'll actually end up being pretty good, because there's a lot of cool things that I can do with that. The way the saucer is shaped, I think it's gonna look really cool because it's gonna feel very harmonious. Is what I'm getting at, because if you've seen Lower Deck when they show engineering, it's basically the room itself is a sphere. So I mean, if you look at the ship, we've already got a template for a circle right here. So we can use a lot of the original hull templates that we have for the saucer to double to do that. Main challenge I'm going to have with that, though, is building turbo lifts to come from the bridge down into the lower decks. No pun intended there, but um, having turbo lifts coming down and not interfering with engineering and not being right next to them, because there aren't any turbo lifts right next to it. Another solution I could do is maybe just build it in the center of um, the warp core. That could be an option, actually, to actually just have the turbo lift in the very center of it. I'm gonna have to mess with it and see how the placement could be. But I might actually have just enough room to do that. That may not be a bad idea. So stay tuned on that. When we get into the interior, that's more than likely, I think it's going to be coming up next week because I still have a couple of episodes or a couple of screen captures left before I catch up to myself. And I am definitely going to be getting on Minecraft tomorrow and over the course of this weekend. That is a promise because now I've made my decision on what I'm going to do on the interior, and I'm going to start rocking and rolling on that. Because on the Cerritos, I don't want there to be any gap in the build. I just want it to be, nice, smooth transition from beginning to end. We did have a tiny gap over the holidays, but I wanted to spend some time with family, and I think everybody else did too. Um, but no, I think this build is going to go pretty smooth. Now, see, that doesn't look horrible right there, and but the only problem with it is the amount of the white concrete halves or the white half slabs. It's too much of it. And if we had it in a different color, if it were the grade like that gray concrete block, it would work. It would totally work. And you can see what I'm trying to do right now, swap out the blocks that I can to get as much as that gray in that I can, but it's just I don't think that's going to work. This right here is a great example where I talk about that there's 101 ways you can build this ship. And this is an example showing it to be true because I've at this point done actually three different interpretations of this back end right here. And I'm sure at some point somebody else is going to build the Cerritos, and their ship is probably not going to match mine at all. They're probably going to build theirs completely different, but at the same time, it'll be the Cerritos. But that is definitely the challenge at the same time. Is I get asked that question from time to time. Where are your blueprints? How can I do this? And I wish I had them because times like this, it would make it so much easier if I had blueprints that I could just look at and be like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. But that it unfortunately does not exist. And the only thing that I can do is just keep tinkering with it until I come up with a pattern that looks good. And that looks like doo-doo. I don't like that in one bit. Way too pixelated and way too much of the white concrete half slabs. That's another thing that can come into your build, making the right decisions on your color palettes. You can see I could get away with some of the white here, but in order to do that, it would have to at least match what I have here pre-existing. So I can get away with like a strip here or strip here. When we get past that and get into these patches and like these big blocks here, it's not matching the rest of the ship. So it's uncharacteristic and it stands out. So that's one of the things I look at when I'm building is kind of what I'm getting at. I'm trying to explain it the best way that I can. And I'm still, getting used to that myself, talking about this because, I mean, prior to this tutorial and the Discovery Enterprise, I haven't really done any full-scale builds other than the mock Enterprise. Before that, I was just posting, my progress, and I just build, on my own. So I've been trying to get a little bit better at that, talking about my thought pattern or thought process behind making the decisions that I make on here. Hopefully that helps. I would like to think that it does because at the same time, you could make the argument, oh, well, I don't need to put that much detail into it or thought. It's just going to come out, perfect on the first go. And if you can do that, hey, I think that's great. I'm not that skilled. I have to stop and take my time and, break it down sometimes and look at it and try to figure out solutions when I get stuck, which is exactly what's happened to me right now. But I found that persistence usually wins out. I haven't had an area on a ship where I've just been completely dissatisfied with it. I've been able to always pull it off to a point where I've at least been able to walk away from it to a point where it doesn't, at least I feel okay with it. But usually, most of the time, it comes out exactly the way I want it. But this part right here, it's just kicking my butt. And I wish right here that I could have skipped ahead a little bit, but the changes that I'm making, there's going to be some variations that I make here and there. And if I would have skipped through this, then for those that are building this with me, I'd be making steps and wouldn't be showing them. So I apologize that we're kind of backtracking here, but you know, this is just the reality of it sometimes. You got to keep trying something out until it comes out the way that you want it to. But that's going to be the difference too between your builds and other builds. Other people would be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm just going to leave it alone and I'm happy with it. But that's why my ships look the way that they do, because I don't think that way, you know? And my attitude is like, no, I'm just going to keep working on it until it comes out the way I want it to look. And that's the way you got to do it. And if it doesn't come out the way that you want it and it just keeps looking like crap, stop what you're doing, take a break from it, because you're just, you're going to pretty much just going to stress yourself out from trying to get it to a point where that you can't get it to. So that's what I'll usually do. And if it gets to that, sometimes I'll even take a break for like a week or two, you know. Give yourself a chance to recharge, because sometimes, I mean, this can be overwhelming when you do ship after ship, because I mean, I've done enough of these at this point to where I've gotten better at it to where I really don't have to backtrack that much. But when you're newer to building, you're doing a lot of this, because and I know that from experience, because when I was building my first ships on Minecraft, this was pretty much all I was basically doing. I'd put something down, I wouldn't be satisfied with it, and I'd do it again. And then there would be something about that that I would be unhappy with, and I'd take it down or I'd make a change here, and I just keep reworking it until it came out the way I wanted it to. Another great example of that would be my Tony Stark mansion. I've got two different videos up of that, I think. Um, there was one that I did like right around when the YouTube channel started, and then there was one that I did not like just a couple of years ago. I did a sequel to it, and watch both of those videos, because you can see the transition, the changes that I made between it. Like, it's the same build, but I just kept reworking sections of it until it came out the way I wanted it to. Another really good example would be my 2009 Enterprise. I kept reworking that to the point where I retrofitted it into the Enterprise A from Star Trek Beyond. Um, so I mean, that was like really a labor of love, and like I worked on that ship. I mean, gosh, for a couple of years, easy, from the very beginning to the end of finishing off the Enterprise A, because I pretty much consider it one ship. I mean, it went from the 2009, and then I changed the engines, I changed the ship, I changed the lower hull, I changed part of the saucer. There's very few areas on that ship that stayed the same. Pretty much like the only things that really stayed the same was like the placement of like one or two things, but a lot of it changed drastically. Now, see what I'm doing right now, I'm onto something. I'm getting to a point where um, I'm basically getting closer to how it's going to look when it's done. And I'm making this part a little bit thinner, and yeah, it's not quite as thick as the piece in the 3D model, but that's okay. Sometimes you can make a small change like that and get away with it. Um, but still, it's not long enough. That design, literally what I have right here, is pretty close to what we're going to end up on. But just literally, we're going to have to bring it back a little bit, and then have to fix this side right here, because that looks a little funky. But this side doesn't look too bad. You see what I did there to keep my pattern consistent, going along with the cut. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. So you start following those rules, you'll start being able to catch your mistakes in your builds, and putting stuff down to fix your mistakes, even though I don't think what I just did there matched. I think now it's going to be a little bit closer. We're going to have to zoom out and take a look. But I don't know if I like that straight part right there because that looks, I don't know. We're not doing too bad. We're gone through the first 18 minutes in today's episode. We still have about 6 minutes left, though. All right, so now we're in the middle cut. I'm stepping away from doing those strips for a moment because they're at this point in the build they're kind of aggravating me. So taking my own advice and I'm stepping away from it for a few moments, and we're going to fill in this lower section here. And I'm trying to basically gauge how thick I want to make it. I haven't at this point decided if I want to make it just one thick or two, but there needs to be a lip right here. And it needs to come down at least by one. But I might end up on two. I don't know. After I do the lip, I'm going to look at it, see what I want to do. Yeah, seeing that lip going in, that looks good. And gives the ship some nice dimensions. So I might end up making that too deep, just because it looks a little, gives the ship way more, I think it makes it look a little bit bigger, to be honest with you. Even that part right there, that doesn't look bad. It's just, it's not long enough right here on the side. Other than that, the rest of the ship looks pretty good. All things considered, first next generation airship under my belt. I can officially say that. And if you're digging this build, if you like the way it came out, let me know in the comments section. If you don't like it, hey, still let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you regarding this. But this was a community request. My top three that I had was the CERRITOS, the Discovery A, and the Enterprise D. And the Enterprise D is going to be next, and then as soon as they make a 3D model or a physical model of the Discovery A, I'm going to build that ship also. But I have a sneaking suspicion that won't happen by the time I'm done with the Enterprise D. So that's one of the reasons I've been saying I'm going to be working on next-gen era ships for a little while, because I'm kind of waiting on that to happen. And once they do, you can bet I'm going to be doing a tutorial on it, because I like the way the Discovery A came out. I'm really digging the way this ship is coming out. I'm actually very proud of this area right here in general. Like, not this part right here. We got to mess with this area right here. So try not to like focus on this right here. Might not look that bad to you, but I could do a lot better. But this part right here, all this part and going around, I'm actually very proud of that, because I wasn't sure that was going to come out all that good. And I've never done a hull like this before. And this was literally just layering out, building it row by row. So I've decided I'm not going to let these pieces defeat me, and I'm going to try to do a little bit more on them before we wrap up tonight's video, but I don't know if we're going to get them finished or not. Might just be spinning our tires a little bit here, but we're going to give it a go. Thinking that pretty much what I could do at this point is bring this part of the hull out. Because like I said, it needs to have a slope, and if I trim it away, kind of like how we have here, I might be able to make it work on the sides. That may not make that much sense, but that's the best sense of it that I can make of it. All right, so that doesn't look too bad, but this part here, we got to figure out a way to stretch that back. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm using the half slabs and just continuing on with my pattern. What we could do right there is do a full block in between them. I think that would probably be appropriate, like right there in the middle. All right, so we did that on the left side, so I want to make sure I hop over to the right side and do the same thing. You see I'm just zooming around, looking at my build, double checking my work pretty much. All right, we're in good shape. Now see, it's starting to look a little bit better now, I think. It has an elongation that it needs. I don't know that it's thin. It's the only downside that this design has that it's too thin. So what I could do to try to fix this is to make just this part right here double wide as far as the thickness goes. That could possibly be a solution. But I think this is definitely a step in the right direction, this pattern. Especially as you zoom out and take a look at it, you can start to envision a little bit more what I'm going for, and I think that's going to work. Yeah. I'm pretty happy with how it looks so far, but we're not done with it. We've got a little bit more work to do on this area here. We've got to close in this strip here. We have to close in this area here on the lower hull too, and then not to mention all the hull detailing and then all the interiors. So there's still a ton of work to do and more episodes to come on the Cerritos, but that's going to wrap us up today. If you did enjoy this content, let me know in the comments section. Also, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're on Twitch, don't forget to follow me on twitch.tv/Zero Elite, where you could always catch my new live streams Sundays through Thursday nights, typically between 9 and 10 p.m. Eastern. And if you're on YouTube, go follow me on youtube.com/C/Zero Elite. You can always catch my new Starship Evo builds on Mondays and my new Minecraft videos Tuesdays through Fridays. Those videos drop at 10 a.m. Eastern. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. Just want to thank everybody again for tuning in. Hope everybody has a happy and safe week, and I will catch you in the next episode.